Hi everyone. Like Emily said, my name is Ashley. I am a first-year graduate student studying speech pathology, and the most important thing about me is that my spirit animal is a pig. I love them. I'm going to have one whenever I'm older. My spirit animal is a pig for 3 reasons. First, because they're pink, and I am also pink. It's my natural skin tone. I got a nice sunburn on my spring break trip to Colorado, which is not a sunny, not a beach, so there's that. Secondly, because pigs are short and round, and I am also a short and round person. And thirdly, because pigs love food, and I love food. More on that later. So, also like Emily said, before spring break, a little while ago, Eric talked about Lent. And I'm going to transition that into Easter, which is not this weekend, but next weekend. It's coming up. And the reason why, so I mentioned that I like food, and that's why whenever I was thinking about Easter, the first thing I thought about was the food my family eats at Easter, specifically resurrection rolls. Who here has ever eaten a resurrection roll? There's literally, there's like 3 people. I don't know why more people don't know about these, because resurrection rolls are literally the most amazing thing that I've ever eaten in my entire life, okay? There's 4 ingredients: crescent roll, butter, cinnamon sugar, and a marshmallow. And each of those relate to Jesus. That's why they're called resurrection. No, listen. Okay, so the crescent roll is like the cloth that they wrapped him in. The oil, the butter, and the cinnamon are the oil and spices that they used to bury him. And Jesus is the marshmallow, the best part, obviously, right? So as I kept thinking about Easter, I thought about the steps to making a resurrection roll, and it super relates to the steps of the Easter story. And then I also saw these events happening in my own life. So we're going to talk about 4 main things: the suffering, Jesus disappearing, realizing Jesus is still there, and then the going away. To me, those are the 4 main parts of the Easter story. So the first of these is the suffering. For resurrection rolls, the suffering is when they go in the oven. That's hell, right? They're being burned, they're suffering. Yeah. And Jesus suffered too, right? We know this. We know this if we read the Bible. We know this if we've seen the Passion play. We know this if we've walked in a church and seen a crucifix. Jesus suffered. And I feel like whenever we experience suffering, that's the Lent part that Eric talked about, right? That's our suffering. And my biggest lesson this Lent was that our suffering isn't measured in how much, it's measured in all or nothing. In fact, Father Mike, a well-known Catholic priest, said in his Ash Wednesday homily that the second biggest lie of the Catholic Church, the second biggest lie, is that doing the harder thing is doing the holier thing. He said doing the harder thing is not necessarily doing the holier thing. And I think he means is that it's not measured in how much, it's measured in all or nothing. And Ryan Barr, a former student, he reiterated this point in his blog post called Offer on What's the Word, which is Newman's blog. You should read it. But he talks about 2 people, the rich young man and the poor widow. And he references that that the poor widow is giving it all. It's not about how much she's giving, it's about the fact that she's giving it all. In the Bible, it says in Luke chapter 21, verse 4, "Yet as the treasury went around, the poor widow contributed from her pocket 2 small coins. For this Jesus blessed her, making special note that she had offered not from surplus riches, but instead from her poverty." From her poverty, in other words, all. So Jesus is saying that we have to give everything we have to enter heaven. And Jesus gave it all whenever he died on the cross. And we unite our suffering with him, but he asks that we give it all, not by dying like he did, but by truly living, but by living with it all. So the next step of making a resurrection roll is taking them out of the oven. They're done cooking. And whenever you take them out, the marshmallow has disappeared. It's gone. And you don't know why. It deflates a little bit. And this happened for Jesus too, right? Everyone saw him die, but the disciples realized that he disappeared whenever they stepped into the tomb. In John chapter 20, verse 24 through 25, it says, "Now Thomas, one of the 12, was not with the disciples when Jesus came. So the other disciples told him, 'We have seen the Lord.' But he said to them, 'Unless I see the nail marks in his hand and put my fingers where the nails were and put my hands in his side, I will not believe.'" Thomas felt betrayed by Jesus. And I think because he felt like Jesus had disappeared. And I think it's really easy whenever we're going through a hard situation to feel like we've been betrayed by Jesus, right? To think, and our first instinct, my first instinct, is to feel like Jesus is gone, right? He disappeared. But I don't want to dwell on that, because the next step of making a resurrection roll is eating it. The best part. And whenever you bite into a resurrection roll, you realize that the marshmallow is still there. The marshmallow has been there all along. It just absorbs into the crescent roll, making it taste 10 times better. And that's Easter. Easter is realizing that Jesus is still there. That's all it is. Easter is realizing Jesus was still there. There's a specific moment for this when the apostles enter the tomb. And it says, "Don't be alarmed. You are looking for Jesus, the Nazarene who was crucified. He has risen. He is not here. See the place where they laid him. But go, tell his disciples and Peter, he is going ahead of you into Galilee. There you will see him, just as he told you." So realizing that's when the big Easter, that's when they realized that he was still there. And I feel like I've had little Easters in my own life over and over again, moments when I realized Jesus was still there. One time I was having a really hard day and a really bad therapy session, and my client was laying on the floor and didn't want to do anything, and I got in my car and I was crying, and I got a text from a friend who said, "Hey, just wanted to let you know that I've been praying for you all day." As I'm sitting in my car, I get this text, and I was like, whoa, Jesus is still there. Jesus was there through the whole thing. Just like Easter, where Jesus proved that he can be anything and that he's still there, always. But that's not the end of the Easter story, right? The last step of resurrection rolls is going out and telling everyone that you just had the most amazing food of your life, which is what I'm doing right now, talking about it for 12 minutes. That's a key component to eating the resurrection rolls. And this was also the last thing that Jesus told the disciples, right? To go out. He said, "All authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Therefore, go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to obey everything that I have commanded you. And surely I am with you always to the very end of the age." The last step is to go. The Easter story continues. And this really hit home for me my last spring break, a year ago, I was in El Salvador on a mission trip with the Newman Center. We had the opportunity to be there on Easter. And in El Salvador, Easter is a 5-hour event. You get up and you go to the church, and there's kids handing us noisemakers and balloons, and we don't really know what's going on. And the first thing you do is a parade. So you walk through the streets for like an hour, like early in the morning, yelling at people that Jesus is risen and to wake up. You're like, wake up, Jesus is risen. We were yelling in Spanish, but that's like what Jesus meant, right? By go out and tell the good news, like literally walking through the streets and telling people about what Jesus had done. So we're in the parade and we're following this statue of Jesus, and then all of a sudden, everyone stops, and a statue of Mary rolls out. These are like massive statues. So Mary comes out, and the crowd like goes wild. Everyone's like, whoa, Mary! And I'm standing there, and I'm sobbing. I'm like, ah, Mary! And the reason why is because it finally hit me that the story continued, that it doesn't just end with chocolate bunnies and Easter baskets on Sunday. There's so much more, right? Jesus ascended into heaven, and he's in heaven, and then he met like everyone that he had met on earth in heaven. And then later, like Mary was assumed into heaven, and he met her too. And then like later, I'll be in heaven and I'll see him too, hopefully. And I was just like, wow, like it keeps going. There, like heaven and the joy that I'll experience there, I got like a taste of that joy from Easter on earth. I got just a glimpse of what it would be like there. So the 4 parts of Easter: Jesus suffering, Jesus disappearing, realizing that Jesus is still there, and then going out and telling people about it. And like I mentioned, Easter, all Easter is understanding that Jesus is still here, realizing that he's been here all along. And we as Catholics actually believe that Jesus is still present in the Eucharist. So we're going to go into adoration now, a time of reflection to just spend some time in the physical presence of Jesus. And I just want us to take some time reflecting on Easter coming up, and also the big Easter, and also all of the little Easters going on in our lives, and all the moments where we realize that Jesus has been there. So we're gonna bring in Jesus, and it's customary to kneel, and then feel free to move around the room and get comfortable and really just spend some time with him.